there. Thanks for joining. Today, I'm Eva, and I manage product marketing here at OneSignal. So in today's webinar, I will cover actual features and provide actionable tips to help you with your messaging strategy. And today we're going to discuss over messaging, what it is, what are the consequences, and what we can do about it. So we'll end with some Q&A, and as you have questions, please do use the Q&A box. So let's get started. So over messaging overview. In general, as you know, messaging helps you build and maintain relationships directly with your customers. It's great because this is like a really engaged audience. They've opted in, they want to hear from you, and it's first party data. So you have a direct line to your customers. However, sending too many messages can have a negative effect, not just on a particular messaging campaign, but on your marketing efforts in the long term. So there's actually two flavors of over messaging. One is from the user / the audience perspective. And what that means is, users get too many notifications from you. And what this does is this can lead to messaging fatigue, and it can actually alienate your customers. So even if your messaging is on point, you spend a lot of time crafting the perfect messages. If you're sending the 10th message in a day or even more, consumers can get tired of hearing from you, and they can actually become conditioned to not engage with your notifications. The other flavor of over messaging is actually from the company perspective. So what happens here is you send a message, everyone clicks at once. And what actually happens is too many people visit your website or your app, and it can actually negatively impact your servers. Reaching everyone, everyone just clicks on the notification, they arrive, your server can actually slow down, it can actually go down, it can actually even take down your website. And server overload can actually affect larger companies as well. So think of, when Nike is releasing some limited edition Kobe's or Jordans, and you try to get in on it, and then you get stuck in kind of like an endless queue, or the site crashes, it's not a great experience either. So what are common causes from both the user and the company perspective? So for example, from the user perspective, you could just be not sending segmented or targeted messaging. Instead, you're just blasting your messaging to everyone, regardless of whether it's actually relevant to them or not. You could have too many types of campaigns running. So for example, you could be managing some blast campaigns, but you also have automated workflows set up. You also have transactional triggered messages going out as well. So managing all of those different types of campaigns, just because you don't necessarily know the timing of everything, you might actually end up unintentionally sending too many messages at once. Another example is if you're triggering a lot of transactional messages. So for example, if you're like a Bitcoin app, and you're monitoring and sending transactions as the price changes. The price can be very volatile, and as things move, you're sending just a lot of updates and notifications to your customers. Another possibility is your users just don't actually check their phones very often. So when they do, they might get a pileup of all of the messages that you've sent recently. So they're just getting hit with everything at once. So from the company perspective, it could be for a couple reasons. So maybe your website infrastructure hasn't scaled with your growth, and it can't handle the site traffic with your messaging. Or even if it can handle the site traffic, maybe it can't handle other results or other actions down the funnel. So for example, browsing or checkouts, things like that. So there are actually a lot of consequences to over messaging. These have a real impact on your business and your business objectives. So for example, customers can react in a number of different ways, all the way from something that's not as bad, which is just ignoring your messages, to something that's actually pretty impactful, which is uninstalling your app, in which case, they've churned, or they can even go on and complain, write negative reviews, and just talk about having a bad experience. And like I mentioned, this actually directly impacts your business, from traffic and visits to engagement to actual revenue, and as well as your company reputation. So we're about to dive into kind of like a mini case example of one particular company that I think a lot of you have heard of. So that example is Clubhouse. If you guys are on Clubhouse, you probably have gotten spammed with a lot of messages. They are pretty well known for being pretty aggressive in their notification strategy. So, one example is consumers might just turn off your notifications. So these people, they got a they got a little conditioned to not want to hear from Clubhouse, and they say that by turning off their notifications, they're probably just going to forget about using the app, which is not something that you want if you've put a lot of effort into your development. Another possible user action is they actually just uninstall your app. They're just so fed up, they don't even want to hear from you or interact with your product at all. So here, you have some people talking about they just want to go ahead and uninstall Clubhouse. Another possible user consequence is, they actually complain, they write negative reviews, and they just generate, not great feelings towards your company at all. And overall, what this does is this just negatively impacts not just your engagement with the messaging, but also your reputation overall. So this has gotten to the point where news outlets are writing articles about Clubhouse and their notification problem. And one of them cited, they gave a screenshot of their of their app engagement, and they showed that Clubhouse had sent 414 notifications over the past week, which is a bit absurd. And so how do we actually combat over messaging? I'm going to go over 2 recent new features that we've launched that help with this issue. Starting off with frequency capping. So this helps address over messaging from the user perspective. So frequency capping is, some of you may be familiar with it. It's common in advertising, especially with display ads, or search as well. So your customers don't see the same ads over and over and get conditioned to ignore it. What frequency capping does is it prevents you from over messaging your users without having to manually keep track of each campaign. So there are a lot of companies that can benefit from frequency capping, especially those that send a high volume of notifications, or if you're managing a lot of multiple campaigns that are running at the same time, or if you have a lot of segments and audiences and overlap, and you don't actually know that your audience is in multiple segments and therefore might be getting communications for each of those segments. So one example of that is a company that's managing multiple campaigns. It could be your operations team wants to send an account update. Your product team wants to send like an update on like a new feature release or product. Your marketing team is running a promotional campaign. Your lifecycle team is starting to send like a re-engagement campaign. And on top of all that, you have automated push workflows going out. You have transactional messages that are being triggered. It's just hard to keep track of all of that that's going on. And so frequency capping is just like, hey, overall, this is how many messages we want a user to get. So how do you actually implement frequency capping? It's pretty easy. You just go to the settings in your dashboard, and then there's like an easy toggle. You turn it on and you define how many messages you want to send. So you can choose different intervals. It can be per hour, per day, or per week. So for example, in this case, if you set a limit of 3 notifications per hour, once you set 3 messages in an hour, you won't be able to send any more. And once the oldest, it is rolling. So once the oldest of those 3 messages passes out of that range, you'll be able to send another notification to the user. You also have the ability to override limits. So sometimes you might have a really important message that you want to make sure it goes out to everyone. It could be some really important breaking news, or it could be an important account update. So you do have the flexibility to override and make sure that notification is seen by everyone. Some of you might ask, well, how do I know what's the right limit? So the right limit really depends on your company, depending on what's the topic, what kind of messaging are you sending? Are they marketing? Are they transactional? What's your industry? Where are you located? Some people, there might be geographical differences based on how accustomed people are to push messages. Could be seasonality. So for example, during like the holidays, like Black Friday, around the Christmas time, people are just conditioned to receive a lot more messages as opposed to, maybe in like the middle of the summer, and other factors as well. One easy way to try to get at that is you can actually set up a in-app lightweight survey and actually just ask your users how many updates they want. So on the right-hand side is an example, taking the election, because that's like another period where you're getting a lot of messages. You can just go ahead and directly ask your user how many messages do you actually want. And then with the responses, you can actually set up an outcome. It's really easy. It's like under the settings, you just say tag it as an outcome, and then you can go to the main screen in your dashboard and you can see the outcomes. So then you can see like how many people are voting for each, and then that'll help you gauge, how much do your customers actually want to hear from you about this. Another way that you can get a sense on it, but it's not as great, is you can analyze your user interaction data. You can monitor your opt-outs, your uninstalls, but you don't want to experiment with that too much, just because once they're gone, they're kind of gone. So you want to take some intermediate steps to try to get more insight from your users first. You can also combat over messaging from the company perspective with a product called message throttling. And that's when, your website might not necessarily be able to handle the traffic. And so what message throttling is, so usually you craft a message and you want it to reach your consumers as soon as possible. But again, if too many people click at the same time, they can take down your servers. This can lead to, just first of all, a bad user experience, lost revenue, and other business effects. So a lot of companies can benefit from throttling, including, so for example, blogs, other sites, e-com as well. And message throttling just really helps you avoid negatively impacting your business operations. So again, similar to frequency capping, actually in the same part of your dashboard, it's really easy to set up. You just toggle it on and you determine how many messages you want to send per minute, just so you're spacing that out, so your servers have a chance to kind of like load balance. So you just really want to match your traffic volume with your server capacity. So you should do some analysis to understand, if you're sending to your user base, like what percentage of people generally interact and how frequently. So do they all tend to click at once, or is it more like spread out? Again, you can set this on the app level and you have the flexibility to adjust for each notification. So depending on your messaging type, you can set a lower limit if, for example, you're announcing a flash sale and you're expecting really high engagement or something with time urgency, as opposed to if you're just sending like a general update, which you might expect lower engagement, you can have a higher limit. We also have a couple of other features where you can do a workaround to try to get at the same objective as well. So the first one is just, I'm sure you're all aware, segmentation. Segmentation is really important. You want to make sure the messaging that you're sending is relevant to your audience. So you're not blasting everyone with the same message, regardless of whether it's relevant to them. And how you achieve this is through filters and data tags. So we have some preset segments that you can use. So for example, inactive users, you can set up engaged users depending on how you define engaged. And then we've done some analysis. You can read the blog article, but segmenting users based on their interests or activity has really impactful increases in your CTR. So for example, if you're a news company, you can segment based on news topics that your users are interested in, or in general, you can segment by, announcements, promotions and offers, recommendations. You just want to make sure that you're really sending the right message to your audience. We do have two ways of easily getting at that segmentation. So one is our category prompt. This basically is a slide down with categories. And when users choose what they're interested in, they're automatically tagged with this. So you can use that to set up your audience. This prompt, we have a couple of different prompts, for example, like the push permission prompt. And we just recently, or we're about to launch our web prompts for email and phone capture. So you should think through what's important to you and then choose which prompts you want, and then you can choose based on delays, what order to show your prompts. So what you can do with this is, for example, if someone says that they're interested in world news, you can use that to target them directly. So I have like a world news item, I'm just going to send directly to the world news users. Or if you have something that you're like, actually, this isn't really relevant for this segment, you can exclude the world news segment from your audience to make sure that, because it's not relevant to them, they're not going to get that message. Another easy way to get at tagging and get more insight from your customers is similar to, before, just ask your customer. In-app messages are really powerful, especially the lightweight survey feature. You just ask them, please opt in to what you're interested in. So for example, following on the same theme, the election's coming up, what kind of updates do you want to hear from? And you don't have to just tag outcomes. You can actually just add these as a data tag. So then you'll have the results that are tagged to your user. And so next time when you're sending your message and deciding your audience, you can pick which audience is relevant for them. And again, you're getting insight directly from your user. So, this is a high intent, engaged audience. Another way to help minimize the noise and distractions is something called notification grouping. So what this is on Android or iOS, you have these different parameters, call them keys, and basically you set a key and it automatically groups your notifications on your device. So instead of getting individual notifications, if they're related, you can group them together to kind of cut down on the distractions. So for example, if you're a social app and you're getting a lot of engagement notifications, you can group those together. If you're selling something, for example, like an auction website, and you get a notification each time someone likes your item or makes a bid, you can group all of those together as well. So this just helps group like with like. We also offer something called notification collapsing. And what that is you only show the latest notification. So for example, if you're sending multiple and your user hasn't engaged, it will actually just override the older notifications, which may actually have become irrelevant by then. So this is automatically done for web push. And on mobile push, you can accomplish this through adding something called a collapse ID. So for example, you can call like weather update. And so then every notification tagged with this collapse ID, the newest one will override the earlier one. So for example, if you're a weather app that's providing weather updates, you can say, weather can change really quickly. It can be, it's sunny, and then 5 minutes later, now it's raining. And then a couple minutes later, now it's sunny again. So like if your user doesn't check your notification until, when the weather's great, you don't want to be sending them, or you don't want them to see the notification that said it's raining when it's not raining anymore. Another option for this, or another example is, if you're a finance app providing market movements, you don't want them necessarily to know all of the movements that aren't relevant. Another option to help with over messaging is to manage your delivery time. So we have a couple of different delivery options. So you can send immediately, you can send based on a certain time in the user's time zone. And we also have something called intelligent delivery. And what this is you optimize your delivery time based on when the user is most likely to engage. So this, again, yeah, we have a blog post out, also helps to improve your open rates, but it's not ideal if you have something that's time sensitive. So it will determine the best time to send in the next 24 hours. So if you have like a flash sale or something time sensitive, you want to make sure that it's getting sent before the sale actually ends. So this is something that you can easily change in directly the push notification form. It's at the bottom under delivery schedule. So this might help kind of like manage and space out your sends as well. And then another option, and you might not know some of these just because, these can be advanced settings, and unless you're really reading what are like the different adjustments and customizations that you can make, it's clear that you might miss some of these. So one of these is time to live. It's under advanced settings, and what this means is you can define how long your notification is going to live. So your push will only show if the end user device comes online before the time to live expires. So for example, if you set a time to live of 3 hours and your user hasn't checked their phone in 3 hours, then your push will just expire and it won't be sent. So this can help manage, especially if you have an audience that's like less engaged with checking their phone and their notifications. This can also help you cut down on sending messages that may later become irrelevant. So if your notifications are time sensitive, you can decrease the time to live parameter. So for example, if you're sending a flash sale that ends in 3 hours, you can set a time to live of 3 hours to make sure that after that is over, users are not getting irrelevant messages. So by default, it's 3 days. So definitely, depending on what your message type is, make sure to adjust that according to your message. And so, yeah, overall, you put a lot of work into your messaging. You iterate on the copy, you debate over which image you use, whether you should use emojis, you run A/B tests to understand what works. Then you send the actual message, you analyze the result. There's a lot of work that goes into it. So make sure that work matters. Make sure that, users aren't turned off just because you're sending them too many messages. So cool. Thanks everyone for joining. Great. Now time for some Q&A. And if you have any questions, please use the Q&A box. So I see one from Sebastian. When will the SDK API allow sending in-app messages? It's something that we're currently collecting user interest in. So if you guys are interested, please reach out to us. Basically, we have a lot of really cool features in the works and we're constantly prioritizing. So if there's something that you're particularly interested in, let us know. And then, just hearing more people interested always helps that bubble up in priority. So Felix asks, is notification grouping, collapse ID, time to live all available in the Android SDK? Yes, it is. So you can, like I mentioned, a lot of those are available in the settings section when you're actually creating the push. So we have a lot of different settings and customizations available. So just take a look at that. You can also check our documentation if you want to know exactly where it is, but they are all available in the Android SDK. So anonymous, are there documentations to read up on to be more familiar with the settings? I'm learning of time to live right now. Well, great to hear that you guys are learning something new. Yeah, all of this is in our documentation. So you can just go to documentation.onesignal and then you can search for these. Matthias, how can I keep my users if I uninstall OneSignal app from my website and then install it again? So normally this is probably a better question for support. There's something with service workers, and I'm not entirely sure. You should probably reach out to support for more technical questions on that. Cool. Any more questions? Okay, so if a notification is sent, but the frequency cap has already been reached, is that notification postponed or canceled entirely? So at this time, if you do have a frequency cap on and you send an additional notification, that notification will be dropped just because, you know, depending on what your notification is, it might be time sensitive. So we don't necessarily want to deliver it once you're out of that frequency cap period. But if that is a feature that you're interested in, please do let us know, and then we can help put that into our product prioritization process. We're constantly iterating on these features, so your feedback always helps us improve, especially hearing your use cases. All right, that's all the questions. Thanks again, everyone, for joining. As always, there's a wealth of information both in our blog and in our documentation.